It was early in the morning, just before 8 a.m., and the street was quiet. The air felt cold, like the kind that makes you wrap your coat tighter. Judge Monica Blake stepped out of her apartment building, keys in hand, her mind already on the day ahead, but a few steps in, she froze. Her car, normally parked neat and untouched, looked like it had been attacked. The windows were shattered, glass scattered across the sidewalk like broken ice. The tires were flat, slashed clean through. The hood was smashed in, not like an accident, but like someone had hit it over and over with something heavy. She walked closer, her heart picking up. There, tucked under the wiper blade, was a piece of paper fluttering in the breeze. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Thick black letters filled the page. It said, "Stay quiet, or next time." It's not just the car. Monica Blake wasn't just any woman walking to work. She was a federal judge, one of the youngest ever appointed in her state. She didn't talk much about her title or brag about the courtroom, but everyone who met her could tell she was sharp, steady, and serious about justice. She had a calm way of handling pressure, and most people respected that, but not all. There were some who didn't like seeing a black woman sitting on one of the highest benches of power. They didn't say it out loud, but it showed in the way they looked at her or how quick they were to challenge her decisions. Still, Monica didn't back down. She had earned her seat and made sure every ruling was fair and by the book. That's what made what happened to her car feel even more personal. Someone out there wanted to scare her into silence. The man behind the threat wasn't a stranger. His name was Greg Stanton, a police officer with a long history of crossing the line. He was the kind of cop people whispered about, but were too scared to challenge. He had a way of using fear, false arrests, pressure, dirty looks to keep people quiet. What made it worse was that he wore the badge like a shield, daring anyone to call him out. Monica had seen right through him. Just a weeks before her car was smashed, Greg had arrested a young Latino man for standing outside a store. No crime, no reason. Monica had reviewed the body cam footage herself. It was clear as day this was about race, so she threw the case out. That decision lit a fire in Greg. He didn't take the loss quietly. Later that day, in the courthouse hallway, he stared Monica down and said through clenched teeth, "You think that robe makes you untouchable? Watch yourself." At the time, it sounded like a tantrum. Now, it sounded like a warning. Monica didn't run. She didn't panic or call the news. She walked straight back inside, closed the door behind her, and made one phone call. Not to the local police. They couldn't be trusted with something like this. She called someone who had real power, someone she trusted with her life. His name was David Knox, her closest friend since law school. He worked in the Department of Justice, in the division that investigates bad cops. Monica didn't need to explain much. David heard the fear in her voice, and he was already on his way. He showed up that same afternoon, walked around the damaged car, read the note, and didn't say much. Then he looked her in the eye and said, "Let's trap him." That was all she needed to hear. From that moment, it wasn't just about staying safe. It was about catching Greg in the act. They didn't waste time. David and his team got to work that same day. They placed small cameras around Monica's apartment building, hidden, but with a perfect view of the street. Her office got wired to, with tiny microphones tucked into spots no one would notice. Even her phone was swapped out for a new one that could start recording with a single tap. Monica kept going about her day like nothing had changed, but now, every step she took was part of a plan. They weren't waiting to get lucky. They were setting a trap. All they needed was for Greg to take the bait, and just like that, he did. A few days later, Monica found another note, this time slipped under her courtroom door. It was short and cruel. "Dismiss the Simmons case, or I leak everything about your brother's record. You'll be done." That crossed the line. Now it wasn't just about her, it was about her family. Monica stood still for a long time after reading that second note. It was short, but it hit hard. Her younger brother Marcus had made one mistake. When he was 19, something stupid he'd paid for, and that record had been sealed for years. It wasn't public. It wasn't supposed to be anyone's business. The fact that Greg had dug it up meant he was digging deep, crossing lines, getting personal. But instead of losing her cool, Monica made a choice. She played along. She used a burner phone to reply, pretending to be scared, pretending to want to talk. She told Greg she didn't want trouble and asked if they could meet somewhere quiet. He took the bait. The plan was in motion. The meeting spot was set in an old, half-empty parking lot behind a hardware store. Just outside the city, Monica was ready, wired up, phone recording, and with backup watching close by. Monica got there first. The lot was mostly empty, quiet except for a few birds and the hum of traffic in the distance. She parked, kept her hands steady, and waited. Not long after, Greg pulled up. No uniform this time, just plain clothes, dark sunglasses, and that same smug look he always wore when he thought he was in control. He walked over to her window, leaned in close, and spoke low. "You do what I say, or your career's over." His voice was calm, like he'd done this before. He didn't know every word was being recorded, live, just a few feet away. Parked behind a row of dumpsters, a black SUV sat quietly. Inside were David and the federal agents, listening to everything. They waited for Greg to say just enough, and when he did, they moved. The SUV pulled up fast. Doors slammed open. Federal agents. "Hands where we can see them." Greg spun around, frozen. It was over in seconds. Greg's face turned pale the moment he saw the agents rushing toward him. He didn't even try to run. One of them pinned his arms back and cuffed him on the spot. Monica stepped out of her car, calm as ever. Greg twisted his head toward her and shouted, "You set me up." She didn't blink. "You set yourself up," she said, her voice steady. "The day you decided to threaten a federal judge." The agents read him his rights as they searched him and bagged the phone he had in his pocket. Back at the station, the evidence stacked up fast, clear audio from the meeting, his fingerprints on the notes, and the threatening text saved on Monica's burner phone. What shocked everyone most was that this wasn't the first time Greg had pulled something like this. He had done it before, used his badge to scare people and cover his tracks, but this time, he picked the wrong person. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled, reporters with notebooks, people from the courthouse, even strangers who had followed the story online. Greg sat at the defense table in a cheap suit, head down, hands folded, no badge, no power. Monica took the stand and told the truth, clear and straight. The recordings were played out loud for everyone to hear. His words, his threats, no way to twist them. The charges were read one by one: threatening a federal judge, destroying property, blackmail, and making terroristic threats. But what hit hardest was who delivered the sentence. The judge that day was a black man Greg had once mocked during a past trial, called him to soft behind his back. Now that same judge looked him dead in the eye and handed down 20 years in federal prison. No parole, no deal, just justice, plain and final. As the officers led Greg out of the courtroom, he looked back one last time. His eyes found Monica, still seated on the witness stand, calm and unshaken in her black robe. There was no anger on her face, no smile either, just quiet strength. Greg's mouth moved. He whispered one word, "Sorry," but it was too late. The damage had been done, and the consequences had finally caught up with him. Monica didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. He had tried to scare her, tried to break her, but in the end, she didn't flinch. She stood her ground, followed the law, and let the truth do the work. Justice had spoken, and this time, it couldn't be stopped.